Good morning, students. Today we will be taking up the topic urinary bladder. So, as you all know, urinary bladder it is an important uh, viscera which is lying within the pelvic cavity. Now, it is a hollow muscular organ which acts as a reservoir of the urine and lies in the anterior part of the pelvic cavity. Now, position of the urinary bladder it varies according to the amount of the urine within it and according to the age of the person. Now, in case of the children, when the urinary bladder is empty or whether the urinary bladder is empty or full, it is abdominopelvic, and the neck of the bladder it lies along the upper border of the symphysis pubis. But in case of the adults, the when the urinary bladder it is empty, it is lying within the pelvic cavity. So it is a pelvic organ at that time. But when the urinary bladder it is full, it is lying within the pelvic cavity, but it distends into that of the abdominal region also. So that at that time it becomes a abdominopelvic organ. And the neck of the urinary bladder it lies along the lower border of the symphysis pubis. Now coming on to the descent of the urinary bladder. Now the rate of descent of the urinary bladder it is very slow. Now from 0 to 3 years it is very rapid, but at 3 to 9 years it is slow, and from 9 to 9 years to the age of the puberty it becomes negligible, and from puberty to the adult age it becomes too slow. Now the shape of the urinary bladder. So you can see over here, this is the urinary bladder. It is almost tetrahedral in shape. And when at the time when it is empty, it is tetrahedral. And when the urine fills up into the urinary bladder, it becomes distended and it is almost ovoid in shape. Coming on to the capacity of the urinary bladder. Now the average capacity of the urinary bladder, it is about 120 to 320 ml. That is, average is 220 ml. Now the sense of filling, it occurs at the time when the urine fills to 100 to 150 ml within the bladder. Then desire to micturition, it occurs when the level it crosses the 150 ml. So from 150 to 250 ml, the person has the desire to micturate. Now the physiological capacity of the urinary bladder, it varies from that of the anatomical capacity. Now physiological capacity is when the urine fills more than 250 ml within the urinary bladder. So the physiological capacity, it is about 250 to 450 ml. Beyond that, the person feels pain in the lower abdominal wall, right? And when the level it reaches 800 ml, there is involuntary emptying of the urinary bladder. Now the anatomical capacity of the urinary bladder, this is not the normal capacity of the urinary bladder. Now this occurs only in case when there are some pathological conditions. Now the capacity of the bladder, it increases to almost 1 liter. Now when this capacity is reached, it leads on to the rupture of the bladder. Now coming on to the referred pain. So in case when there is filling up of the urinary bladder and there is the person feels pain, so that pain is referred to the anterior abdominal wall, perineal region, as well as to that of the penis. The presenting parts. So the presenting parts in the empty and the contracted bladder, these are the apex, then base, which is the posterior surface, neck of the urinary bladder, then three surfaces and four borders. So in this diagram, you can see all the presenting parts. So this is the apex of the urinary bladder to which the median umbilical ligament is attached. Now this is the posterior surface or the base of the urinary bladder, which lies exactly opposite to that of the apex. There are now this over here, this is the constricted part. So this constricted part is called as the neck of the urinary bladder. Now the urinary bladder, it is having four borders. So the four borders, these are this one, this is the anterior border which is extending from the apex to that of the neck. Then two lateral borders are there which are extending from the apex to the ureters. So you can see in this figure, these are the ureters. So the one which is extending, border extending from apex to the ureter, it is called as the lateral border. So the lateral border is on this side as well as on the other side the lateral border is present. Now the border which is extending between the two ureters, that is called as the posterior border. Now it is having three surfaces. So three surfaces are the one which is lying above, that is called as the superior surface, and that is between that of the two lateral borders and that of the posterior border. Two inferolateral surfaces are there. These are the one which is lying over here. So that is between that of the this anterior border and the lateral border. So whole of this is the inferolateral surface, right? So you can have a closer look of this. This is how the formulated this urinary bladder, it is placed within that of the pelvis. So you can see in this pelvis, this is the apex of the urinary bladder, and to this is the median umbilical ligament which is attached to it. So exactly opposite to it is the base of the urinary bladder or the posterior surface of the urinary bladder. Now the one which is extending between the this apex and the ureter, this is the lateral border, and between the apex and the neck, this is the anterior border. So this part, this triangular part, this is the superior surface of the urinary bladder, while the one which is lying on this lateral side, this is the inferolateral surface. Now you can see in this diagram that this is the apex, and apex it is directed upwards and forwards, and the median umbilical ligament, it is attached to it. So this median umbilical ligament, it is nothing but this is the remnant of the intra-abdominal part of the allantois, that is the ureters. Now the posterior surface or the base, which is also called as the fundus, it is almost triangular in shape. So you can see in this is the posterior surface of the urinary bladder, and it is triangular in shape. It is directed posterior-inferiorly towards the rectum, right? In both the sexes, this in males and females, this posterior surface, it is non-peritoneal. But in case of the males, the upper part of this is this posterior surface, that is peritoneal. So you can have a closer look of this specimen of the urinary bladder. So you can see this is the apex. So exactly opposite to the apex, this is the base of the urinary bladder, which is also called as the posterior surface or the fundus, right? So in this posterior surface, you can see these are the seminal vesicles, and this is the vas deferens, right? So this whole part, this is non-peritoneal, while in case of the male, the upper part, it is the peritoneum. It is covered with that of the peritoneum. Now the neck of the urinary bladder, so you can see this is the constricted part is seen over here. This is the neck of the urinary bladder. It is the most fixed part of the bladder, and this you can see this is pierced by that of the urethra, and it lies about 3 to 4 centimeters behind the pubic symphysis. So you can see in this. So this is the urinary bladder, this is the apex of the urinary bladder, this is the anterior border, right? And below this constricted part, this is called as the neck of the urinary bladder. So this part, this is the most fixed part, this is the most dependent part of the urinary bladder. Coming on to the relations of the urinary bladder. So you can see this is the male pelvis, and this is the female pelvis. Now in case of the male pelvis, this is the urinary bladder, and it is closely related to that of the seminal vesicles, vas deferens, and the rectovesical fissure. So this is the rectum, this is the urinary bladder, between the two is the rectovesical fissure. So this urinary bladder, it is related to seminal vesicles, then vas deferens and the rectovesical fissure. While in case of the females, you can see this is the urinary bladder, this is the uterus, and this is the vagina. So this urinary bladder, it is related with that of the anterior wall. So this is the anterior wall of the vagina, and it is related to that of the supravaginal part of the cervix. Now you can see both the male and the female bladder. So this is the male pelvis in which the male bladder is placed, and this is the female pelvis where the female bladder is placed. So the difference between the two is that in case of the female bladder, this you can see this is the uterus. Uterus is placed between the rectum and that of the urinary bladder. Now you can see this urinary bladder in case of the male, it is related with that of the seminal vesicles, vas deferens and the rectovesical fascia. While in case of the females, it is related with that of the, so this is uterus and below this is the vagina. So it is related to the supra anterior wall of the vagina and the supravaginal part of the cervix. Coming on to the surfaces, now this is, you can see this red area, this is the superior surface of the urinary bladder. Now it is triangular in shape and it is covered with that of the peritoneum. Now it is related with that of the sigmoid colon, coils of the, so this is the, as you can see, this is the rectum, above this is the sigmoid colon. So it is related to that of the sigmoid colon, coils of the small intestine as well as to that of the uterus in case of the females. And the inferolateral surface, which is lying over the lateral side, inferolaterally, it is directed downwards and laterally, and it is non-peritoneal. So this part, it is related to that of the pubic symphysis, body of the pubis, the levator ani, this levator ani muscle, and that of the obturator internus muscle. Now, space of the radius. So you can see this is the urinary bladder, this is the pubic symphysis, and between the two, this is a potential gap is present over there, which is horseshoe shaped. So this space is called as the space of radius. So this space, it is lying over here. It is horseshoe shaped space, and it acts as a bursa to allow the distension of the bladder. So when the bladder fills up more than its capacity, then it gives a space for expansion, right? So it is bounded anteriorly in front with that of the symphysis and the body of the pubis. Behind, it is bounded by that of the posterior ligament of the bladder. Above lies the peritoneum of the paravesical fossa. Below, it is related to that of the pubovesical pubovesical ligament in case of the females, and puboprostatic ligament. So pubic bone ligament extending from pubis to that of prostate is the puboprostatic ligament. So below it is related with that of puboprostatic in case of the male, and in females to that of the pubovesical ligament. Now medially it is related to that of the inferolateral surface of the urinary bladder, and on the lateral side it is related to that of the fascia, which is covering the levator ani and the obturator internus muscle. Now contents of the this space, these are the retropubic. So you can see this yellow part, this is the retropubic fat. So contents are the retropubic fat and the vesical plexus of the veins. So what is the importance of this space? Now this space, it can be used for the surgical approach in case of operating on the bladder and that of the prostate. So in case to approach the bladder and the prostate, this space is intervened, right? Now you can see in this is the anterior border of the urinary bladder extending from the apex to that of the neck of the urinary bladder. Similarly, this is the posterior border, and these are the two lateral borders. Right? Now in the distended bladder, it is ovoid in shape, while in the empty, it is almost tetrahedral in shape. So antero-inferiorly, it is a non-peritoneal, while posterior-superiorly, it is covered with that of the peritoneum. And neck of the urinary bladder, it is the most fixed part. Base and the neck is the most fixed part. So you can see in this again. So this is the urinary bladder, this is the apex, opposite to it lies the base. So the space of it lies between that of the urinary bladder and the pubic bone, right? So this space, whole of the space is filled with that of the fat. Coming on to the ligaments of the bladder. So there are two types of ligaments are present in the urinary bladder. Those are the true ligaments and that of the false ligaments. So what are these true ligaments? True ligament, it is nothing but it is the condensation of the pelvic fascia around the neck and the base of the bladder. And so it is as it is lying around the neck and the bladder of, so it is giving support to that of the urinary bladder. So these ligaments, these are 9 in number. One is the median umbilical ligament, which cannot be seen in this figure. Then there are 4 puboprostatic ligaments in case of the male, or it can be referred to as the vesicle ligaments in case of the females. So there are a pair of the medial puboprostatic ligament and a pair of the lateral puboprostatic ligaments. Next is the pair of lateral ligament, and this is the pair of the posterior ligaments. So in all, you can see there are 9 true ligaments present over here. Next is the false ligaments. So false ligaments, what are these? These are the peritoneal folds. So you can see these are the peritoneal folds, and they do not have any supportive function as performed by that of the true ligaments. So these ligaments, these are 7 in number. So this one is the median umbilical ligament, a median umbilical fold which is raised by that of the urethra. Then lateral to it is the medial umbilical fold which is raised by that of the obliterated umbilical artery. Now lateral to this is the lateral umbilical fold. Now this fold, it is nothing but it is the reflection of the peritoneum of the urinary bladder, and posterior to it lies the false posterior ligament which is known as the sacrogenital fold. So that sacrogenital fold, it extends from that of the side of the bladder posteriorly on either side of the rectum to the anterior aspect of the third sacral vertebra. So this ligament that cannot be seen in this diagram. So coming on to the differences between the true and the false ligaments of the urinary bladder. True ligaments, these are the condensations of the pelvic fascia, while the false ligaments, these are only the peritoneal folds. So these true ligaments, they provide support to the bladder, while the false ligament, it does not provide any kind of support to that of the bladder. So these true ligaments, these are 9 in number, while the false ligament, it is 7 in number. So true ligaments, these are the median umbilical ligament, lateral true ligament, then a pair of lateral puboprostatic ligament, pair of medial puboprostatic ligament, and a pair of posterior ligaments. While the false ligaments, these are, number one is the median umbilical fold, which is unpaired, then a pair of medial umbilical folds, pair of lateral umbilical folds, pair of posterior false ligaments, also called as the sacrogenital folds. Next is the bed of the urinary bladder. Now all the structures which are giving support to the urinary bladder, they form the bed of the urinary bladder. Now when the urinary bladder, it gets filled up with that of the urine, it requires some kind of support. So that support, that is provided by that of the symphysis pubis and the body of the pubis anteriorly, then fascia of the levator ani muscle, obturator internus muscle, then over here lies the retropubic fat. So all these are the structures which are giving it support anteriorly. Then posteriorly, the support is given by the ampulla of the rectum in case of the males, and while in case of the females, that support is given by that of the anterior wall of the vagina. So in case of this females, you can see the uterus is present between the rectum and the urinary bladder. So in males, the support posteriorly is given by the ampulla of the rectum, while in case of female, the support is given by the anterior wall of the vagina. And next is the base of the prostate or the superficial fascia of the urogenital diaphragm. So these are all the structures which are forming the bed of the urinary bladder. Coming on to the microscopic structure. Now the bladder wall, it from within outwards, it is composed of the mucous membrane, then muscular layer, and that of the adventitia. Now mucous membrane, as you can see, it is pale pink in color, and it is covered with that of the transitional. So you can see over here, this is covered with that of the transitional epithelium. Now this is thrown into folds. So these folds are called as the rugae. So these rugae, these are present when the bladder is empty. When the bladder, it gets filled up with the urine, these rugae, they all disappear. Right? Next is the muscular coat. So the muscular coat, it consists of 3 layers. So the outer one is the longitudinal muscle layer, middle one is the circular muscle layer, and the innermost is the again the longitudinal muscle layer. So all these muscle layers, they are all intermingled with each other. So clearly you cannot separate all these three layers. Since the muscle fibers of the bladder wall, they are mainly concerned with evacuation of the urine. So collectively all these muscles, these are called as the detrusor muscle. Now outer to the detrusor muscle lies the adventitia, which is made up of the fibroelastic tissue. Next important structure which we'll see is the trigonum vesicae or the internal trigon. So you can see over here this triangular space which is present over here. This is called as the trigon of the urinary bladder or the trigonum vesicae. So this trigonum vesicae, as you can see, this is equilateral triangle in the inner base of the bladder. So the mucous membrane, so this is the trigon. So you can see the mucous membrane over the trigon, it is tense and glistening. It is due to the absence of the submucous content. Now this trigon, it is having an apex. So apex, it is having a anterior-inferior angle and two posterior-superior angles are present. So anterior-inferior angle, as you can see, it is formed by that of the internal orifice of the urethra, while the posterior-superior angles, these are formed by the openings of the ureter. Next important structure which is present within the trigon, that is called as the uvula vesicae. So what is this uvula vesicae? It is nothing but it is the elevation which is present in the mucous membrane immediately above the internal urethral orifice. So this elevation, that is produced by the median lobe of the prostate. Now base of the urinary bladder, so you can see this is the base of the urinary, the base of the trigon. So it is the interureteric ridge. So this interureteric ridge, it extends between the two ureters. So that is called as the bar of Mercier. Now when the bladder, it is distended, this bar of Mercier, this is about 5 centimeters in length, right? And it connects the two orifices together. While when the bladder, it is empty, this gets reduced in size and it becomes 2.5 centimeters, right? Now it is produced by the continuation. So this bar, it is produced by the continuation of the bladder wall of the inner longitudinal course of the ureters. Now coming on to the structure of the trigon, within outwards, it consists of the mucous membrane which is having the transitional epithelium. Now as the submucous coat, it is absent in the trigon, so that submucous coat, that is replaced by a special type of muscle which is called as a trigonal muscle of the bell, and it is strongly adherent with that of the mucous membrane. Next, it is having the fascia of Walthius and the detrusor muscle. Now, importance of this trigon is that it is the most fixed part of the most fixed. So this trigon, it is the most fixed and the dependent part of the urinary bladder of the urinary bladder, and it is rich in blood and the nerve supply. Then next peculiar feature is that it develops from the mesoderm of the mesonephric ducts, whereas the rest of the bladder mucosa, it is developed from the endoderm of the cloaca. So in the previous slide, we have discussed about the uvula vesicae. So you can see in this, this is slight elevation is produced over here. This is called as the uvula vesicae, which is produced by the elevation, which is produced by that of the median lobe of the prostate. Now, what is the applied of this trigon? So yes, you can see this is the elevation which is produced over here. So in case of the males in the older age group, what happens is when the prostate gets enlarged, this uvula vesicae, it acts as a ball valve. So when the urine has to flow downwards, it is obstructed by this ball. So when the patient exerts more strain to void the urine flow becomes more diminished, since the uvula, it bulges within the sphincter vesicae. So the sphincteric control suffers. Eventually the urine trickles down the proximal urethra and produces the frequency of micturition. Another importance is that the interureteric ridge, which we saw, that is the bar of Mercier, that is seen as a pale band, and through the cystoscope, it acts as a guide for the surgeons to identify the ureteric orifices in case of retropylography, where the ureteric catheters have to be passed. Now the blood supply of the urinary bladder. Now the blood supply, it is principally by that of the superior vesicle and that of the inferior vesical arteries, which are the branches of the anterior division of the internal iliac artery. So you can see this is the common iliac artery, this is the internal iliac, and this is the external iliac artery. So superior vesicle and the inferior vesical arteries, these are the branches of the anterior division of the internal iliac artery. Other arteries which are supplying to it, these are the obturator and the inferior ureter arteries, and in case of the females, these are the uterine and the vaginal arteries. Now the venous drainage, that is by the veins which do not follow the arteries. Now they form a complicated plexus on the inferolateral surface of the urinary bladder, of the urinary bladder near the prostate. So that is called as the vesico-venous plexus. Now this vesical plexus, it drains into that of the internal iliac vein. Now this venous plexus, it communicates with that of the prostatic plexus in case of the males, and in case of the females, it communicates with that of the veins at the base of the broad ligament. Next is the lymphatic drainage. So lymphatic drainage, it is chiefly into that of the external iliac group of lymph nodes, but it may also drain into that of the internal iliac nodes, including the nodes of the obturator fossa. Coming on to the nerve supply of the urinary bladder. So it has got a sympathetic, parasympathetic, and the somatic fibers. So sympathetic nerve supply, that is derived from the T11 to L10, L2 segment of the spinal cord, right? So you can see over here, so this is derived from the T11 to L2 segment of the spinal cord, and it is inhibitory to the detrusor muscles of the urinary bladder, and it is motor to that of the sphincter vesicae. And the parasympathetic nerve supply, so this nerve, it is also called as a nerve of filling. Next is the parasympathetic nerve supply, that is by that of the nerves which is derived from that of the S2, S3, S4 segments of the spinal cord, and it is motor to the detrusor muscle, and it is inhibitory to that of the sphincter vesicae, that is the internal urethral sphincter. Now because of this, it is also called as the nerve of emptying. Now another is the somatic fibers. So the somatic fibers, these are derived from the pudendal nerve, which is again derived from that of the S2 to S4 segment of the spinal cord, and they are motor to that of the external urethral sphincter. Now the sensory innervation, that is the pain which occurs at the time of distension or spasm, that is perceived both by that of the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nerves. So this is the summary of all the sympathetic action of the sympathetic, parasympathetic, and the somatic nerves. Now coming on to the maturation reflex. So you can see the filling of the urinary bladder. When the urinary bladder fills up, it causes the stimulation of the stretch receptors, and thus causes the afferent impulses to pass via the pelvic nerves. Then so they passes through the pelvic nerves to the sacral segment of the spinal cord. Then the efferent impulses, they pass via this pelvic nerve to that of the urinary bladder, which causes the contraction of the detrusor muscle and the relaxation of this internal sphincter. So due to this, what happens is the urine, it enters into the urine flows into that of the urethra, and thus again stimulation of the stretch receptors occurs. The afferent impulses, they pass via that of the pelvic nerves, thus causing the, so these causes the inhibition of the pudendal nerve. So its inhibition leads on to the relaxation of the external sphincter. So when this external sphincter, it relaxes, it leads on to the voiding of the urine. So this, in this picture you can see the maturation reflex that is initiated by that of the urinary bladder, impulses pass to the sacral region of the spinal cord, then it again travels back to that of the urinary bladder, which causes the distension of the urinary bladder. Now, increased frequency of the action potential passes from this pelvic nerve to the sacral region. Then parasympathetic neurons, they get activated and they pass from over here to that of the urinary bladder. Now it leads on to the, so when it passes over to the smooth muscle of urinary bladder, it causes contraction. Thus, the sensory stimulus, it passes through the ascending pathway from the sacral region to the pons, from the pons to the cerebrum. So thus, the higher center, it sends the impulses to pass the urine. But suppose if the person is not able to pass the urine at that time, then again the this maturation reflex is inhibited and the external urethral orifice, that is contracted. So the urine is not voided at that time. But again, suppose if the person wants to pass the urine, the impulses, they pass from the cerebral cortex to and the maturation reflex, it is again established, which causes contraction of the urinary bladder and relaxation of the external urethral orifice, thus leading on to the voiding of the urine. Coming on to the development of the urinary bladder. So as we had already seen, the trigonum vesicle, it develops from the mesoderm or the mesonephric duct. So in this diagram, you can see this is the cloaca and these are the mesonephric ducts. So these mesonephric ducts, rest of the mucosa, so mesonephric ducts, it leads to formation of the trigonum vesicle, while the mucous membrane of the rest of the urinary bladder, that is derived from that of the cloaca. So you can see over there, this cloaca, it leads to formation of this urinary bladder, and these mesonephric ducts, they get absorbed over the posterior surface over the urinary bladder. So later on, this leads on to the formation of the trigone over here, right? And the apex, so you can see this is the apex, it is formed by the absorption of the proximal part of the allantoid diverticulum, while the musculature and the other structures, these are derived from the splanchnic layer of the lateral plate of the mesoderm. Coming on to the applied aspect, number one is the rupture. So rupture of the urinary bladder only occurs when the capacity of the urinary bladder, it reaches the anatomical capacity. So the anatomical capacity, as we have already said, it is about 1 liter. So when the capacity of the urinary bladder, it reaches around 1 liter, it ruptures. Now this capacity, anatomical capacity, it is not the normal capacity. So it occurs only in case of the trauma or in certain pathological conditions. Next is the chronic obstruction. So chronic obstruction occurs in case of the BPH. So in the older age group where there is benign hypertrophy of the prostate, it leads on to that of the obstruction of the urine. Next is the condition which itself leads to the hypertrophy of the urinary bladder. Next condition is the hydrouretus and the hydronephrosis. There occurs the stagnation of the urine within the ureters and the renal pelvis. So because of that, again, it leads on to that of the obstruction of the urine. Next condition is the congenital rectovesical fistula and the congenital vesicovaginal fistula. So these both are the developmental anomalies. Now in this case, you can see this is the normal, this is the urinary bladder, this is the rectum. But in case of the rectovesical fistula, you can see there is communication between that of the rectum and the bladder. So this type of fistula is formed between that of the rectum and the bladder. While in case of the females, where the this uterus is placed between the two, the communication is between the vaginal wall and that of the urinary bladder. So this is called as the vesicovaginal fistula. Next is the bladder exstrophy, or which is also called as the ectopia vesica. So as you know, ectopia means the site other than that of the normal. So in this condition, what happens is there is defect in the anterior abdominal wall as well as the defect in the anterior bladder wall. So because of that, the urinary bladder, it is exposed towards the external surface. That is, it is externally visible. Next condition that is called congenital anomaly. It is due to the defective obliteration of the allantois. So you can see over the here, this is the uricus. So in case of the urachal fistula, what happens is there is communication between. So this is patent. This urachal fistula, that is uricus, that is patent. So if there is communication between that of the urinary bladder and the anterior abdominal wall. So this is called as the urachal fistula. Now this is the urachal. Next is the urachal cyst, where the both the ends of this urachal fistula, these are obliterated, while the middle part that remains patent. So that leads on to formation of urachal cyst. Next anomaly is the urachal sinus, where the part over here that is obliterated, while the anterior one, which is over here, that is patent and is opening into that of the umbilicus or the anterior abdominal wall. Next is the next applied is the urinary incontinence. So there are several type of incontinence present. These are the stress incontinence, urge incontinence, overflow incontinence, and the neurogenic incontinence. So in case of the stress incontinence, you can see over here there is weakness in the pelvic floor muscles. So whenever there is weakness in the pelvic floor muscle, whenever there is raised intra-abdominal pressure, what will happen? There will be due to the increased abdominal pressure under stress, the weak pelvic muscles, they won't be able to support the bladder, so there will be incontinence of the urine. Next is the urge incontinence. Now in this, what happens is the uninhibited bladder, it causes the voluntary contraction. So it is going to cause the voluntary involuntary contractions of the urinary bladder, which is not under the control of the person. So there is involuntary contractions of the urinary bladder, and it causes the urge to incontinence. So thus there will be no residual urine present within the urinary bladder. Next is the atonic type of urinary bladder or the overflow incontinence, where there is blockage of the urethra. So over here, there is blockage of the urethra, thus leading on to the overflow incontinence. Next is the neurogenic incontinence, where it occurs due to the impaired functioning of the nervous system. So it leads on to that of the reflux bladder. Next, you can see this is the suprapubic cystostomy. So cystostomy, it is an extraperitoneal. So you can see this is the extraperitoneal approach to open the cavity of the urinary bladder. So this is done for the drainage purpose, and for the treatment of the intravesical conditions like the vesical stones, when the stones are present in the bladder, or in case of the removal of the prostate gland. So in that case, the extraperitoneal approach of the urinary bladder is done. So you can see this is the trabeculated bladder. It results due to the chronic obstruction of the outflow of the urine. So the obstruction occurs because of the enlarged prostate or stricture of the urethra. So the bladder, it becomes distended, and its musculature, it hypertrophies. So you can see the muscle fasciculi, they increase in size, they interlace in all the directions, giving rise to open wave appearance, and the bladder wall thus is called as the trabeculated bladder. Next type of the bladder, it is the neurogenic bladder. Now neurogenic bladder, in this condition, the micturition reflex involves sensory and the motor pathways. So motor pathways means that is the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. So both these are mediated by that of the lower micturition center. Now the voluntary control over the reflex, it is exerted by the higher center, that is cerebral cortex, through the upper motor neurons of the pyramidal tract. So any defect in the neural mechanism of micturition, it leads to neurogenic bladder. So types of neurogenic bladder are of two types, that is the automatic reflex bladder, which is also called as the upper motor neuron bladder, or the spastic bladder. Another type is the autonomous or the reflex bladder, which is also called as the lower motor neuron bladder, or the flaccid bladder, also called as the atonic bladder. So you can see in this is the automatic reflex bladder, which is called also called as the upper motor neuron type of bladder. So in this condition, what happens is it results from the complete transection above the lower. So this is the lower micturition center, and transection occurs above this lower maturation center. So it is going to involve the pyramidal tracts, the upper motor neurons. So the voluntary control is lost. So in this case, voluntary controls as the higher center, the transaction is above the maturation center, lower maturation center. So the control from the higher center, that is lost. So higher center, that is responsible for the voluntary control of the bladder. So that is lost, but the reflex is intact. So what happens is, in this case, the patient presents as the voluntary inhibition and initiation of the maturation are lost, but bladder, it reflexly empties every 1 to 4 hours. When the filling reaches certain level, detrusor muscle contracts and reflexly the bladder, it empties, as in case of the infancy. So this is called as the automatic or the reflex bladder. Next type of bladder is called as the autonomous bladder. So autonomous bladder, also called as the flaccid or the lower motor neuron type of the bladder. So in this case, what happens is, it results from the destruction of the S2 S4 segments of the spinal cord. So in the upper motor neuron type transaction, there is destruction above the level of the lower maturation center, but in case of autonomous, the destruction is at the level of the S2 to S4 segments of the spinal cord. That is, the lower maturation center is affected over here. So both the voluntary as well as the voluntary as well as the reflex control, both are lost. So in this case, the clinical presentation will be that the reflex and nervous control of maturation is lost. The bladder, it becomes flaccid. So over here you can see the bladder becomes flaccid. The capacity of the bladder, it is greatly increased, and this results in continuous dribbling of the urine, and this type of bladder is also called as the autonomous bladder. Now the bladder, in this case, it has to be emptied manually. It has to be manual compression is done for emptying the bladder, or abdominal muscular contraction has to be done. So this is the atonic, this is the flaccid type of the urinary bladder, or the autonomous type of the bladder. So that's all for today. Thank you.